Hello, I'm Jim Cornell, and this is Base to Base, the weekly biotech podcast from Air Coastal Media. Yes, welcome again to the Base to Base biotech podcast, and this is number 60, and it's going live on May the 22nd. Another public holiday on Monday coming up in parts of the UK, and therefore no school, so by definition that means rain. Maybe it's just me. I remember I went to a trade show in Dubai once and was told that they only get a couple of days rain every year, and of course the first 2 days that I was there, it poured. Although the time that I lived in Nevada it didn't rain at home once. I did see quite a few flash floods close up though, and those are scary. No wonder there are severe warnings in place when one happens. Last week our guests were DIA Chief Science and Regulatory Officer Maria Vasilova and Medicus Pharma CEO Raza Bokhari. This time we have a conversation with the founder, director and chief scientific advisor of Alessa Therapeutics, Pamela Munster. Just the one interview this week due to some technical difficulties, which means the recording of our other interview was so choppy that we decided to re-record it in a week or so's time. It didn't seem that bad at the time, but clearly it was. It reminded me a lot of the comedian Norman Wisdom from my hometown, who built a successful career largely on one sketch, where he pretends that the microphone isn't working properly. If you do have news or suggestions for who should be on the podcast, or indeed any other suggestions or comments, please do get in touch at jim@deeptechdigest.com, which is also the address you can use if you're interested in advertising with us or sponsoring a podcast episode, or both, or for event coverage. First, it's time to go through some of the headlines of the articles you may not have read over at deeptechdigest.com in the past week. A lab-designed molecule offers a promising alternative for celiac disease. Myelin is being promoted as a new brain regulator, and we had an article on a new hereditary epilepsy treatment. A new blood test that detects tumour DNA could help guide treatment when cancer has spread. A new drug candidate shows promise in brain cancer, and proteins that drive fibrosis can be blocked. We had an article on challenging assumptions about lymph node radiation therapy in breast cancer. The ADDF praised progress being made on drugs tackling Alzheimer's disease, and there are promising results from an LGMD-R5 limb-girdle muscular dystrophy gene therapy trial. Phase 1b data from a trial on post-immunotherapy hepatocellular carcinoma were shared. Global collaboration on Kawasaki disease is the key to reducing the risk of serious heart conditions, and a pilot trial suggests an anti-inflammatory drug could help difficult-to-treat depression. And you can read all of these and plenty more at deeptechdigest.com. Okay, this week we're talking about prostate cancer. It's definitely one of the most common and most talked about cancers out there. It's one of those cancers that's challenging mainly because diagnosis often happens when the disease has taken a hold, and it's far more difficult to treat in its later stages. As you may remember, a few weeks ago we had an interview with Valley Diagnostics, a Welsh company developing next-generation lateral flow diagnostic tests designed for early detection of human and animal diseases, including accurate and fast tests for prostate cancer, lung cancer, and bovine tuberculosis. So, earlier diagnosis may be approaching. But for those with prostate cancer, the company Alessa Therapeutics is making a difference with its delivery method that's showing some amazing results in reducing cancer tumours. To tell us all about it is the founder, director and chief scientific advisor of Alessa Therapeutics, Pamela Munster. Hi Pamela, thanks so much for being with us on the podcast today. It's greatly appreciated. Perhaps to get things started, you could tell us a little about the company.
Yeah, so we are a small San Carlo-based biotech company that is focused on a localized drug delivery with a main focus on prostate cancer. This was founded as a UCSF spin-off by myself and my lab partner, Scott Thomas. And now we have 3 clinical trials where we are looking at whether we can reduce the risk of prostate cancer progression and avoid men who are on active surveillance to need a prostatectomy or a definitive surgery.
Where did the name of the company come from?
Alessa was picked because Alessa is a goddess of prevention. So we had a very devoted breast cancer supporter help us with the name early on.
I guess prostate cancer is one of the most common cancers there is. Why is it that you think there's still such a big unmet need surrounding it?
Historically, a major focus on all drug development has been on the metastatic side of prostate cancer, so men whose prostate cancer has spread to other parts of the body. There's historically not been a big role in the early prostate cancer space. In fact, there's actually very little pharmacological intervention. Earlier on, a drug called bicalutamide is being used when men have locally advanced prostate cancer and get radiation. We use bicalutamide and chemical castration to help with the radiation. But there's never been really an independent anti-androgen in this space.
As far as diagnosis is concerned, how does that affect the ability to treat prostate cancer? Because it's not exactly the most accurate method that's used globally right now, and it's also very invasive.
So the way we diagnose prostate cancer is, particularly early prostate cancer, is multifold, and this is rapidly evolving. Very early on, it was men would get a digital rectal exam, and we would find a nodule and then get a biopsy. Then later on, we developed a blood test called PSA, prostate-specific antigen, that men could get a blood test, and the PSA rises as men get older, and so that would be a screening test. And then more advanced, and in some countries in Europe, prostate cancer screening happens by doing MRIs. And then what we're probably going to see in the future, prostate cancer will also be detected by DNA in the urine. So this is a rapidly evolving field. The big question, however, is, and that's where many of the countries are at odds, is like, when do we screen? Who do we screen? And does everyone benefit from screening? I just came back from the AUA, the big urology conference, and I think the question on whom to screen, when to start, and by what modality is still a bit up in the air.
All right, so could you tell me about the drug and how that works?
So the concept of our strategy is like, we have long known that prostate cancer is driven by androgens, in a way, testosterone. If you block testosterone you can do this by 2 ways. You can either reduce the production of testosterone by what we call chemical castration, or you can block the androgen receptor by a drug that is called an anti-androgen, and there's several around. Enzalutamide, apalutamide, and darolutamide are typically used drugs that block the androgen receptors. They all have been shown to have high efficacy in men with metastatic disease. So when they did the ENACT trial, they looked at, could we give enzalutamide to men for a year by pill every day for a year? And what they found is, like, if we did that, you could actually reduce the risk of having prostate cancer progression, turning a prostate cancer into a more aggressive form that could potentially harm the patient. They saw a very significant impact in this. So enzalutamide given orally for a year was actually quite effective. However, it has a lot of side effects. As you can imagine, if you remove the way testosterone works in multiple parts of your body, that takes away what drives men's energy. So the side effects included a lot of fatigue, erectile dysfunctions, there was hair loss. But then what we also found what was a bit surprising was because the anti-androgen wasn't opposed, now estrogen started to be dysregulated in the breast. So about 30% of men had breast growth or had nipple pain. So there was quite a bit of side effects. So what we did is then we took this drug, enzalutamide, we formulated it into an implant that we could place into the prostate with the sole goal is like the organ that really needs the anti-androgen gets it. So the prostate gets flushed with high doses of enzalutamide, but the rest of the body doesn't see it. So we just finished our first 20 patients where men got these implants placed in their prostate to see whether we can actually shrink tumors. And in 85% of our patients, we could see tumor shrinkage. So we were really quite excited about this. And what we found is like compared to enzalutamide levels that are typically about 16,000, when you give it orally, our prostate levels are in the 20 and 30 milligrams per ml. So we were really excited how little drug we have around.
How is it implanted? Is that an operation or can it be done without anesthetic?
So it's done the same way as a man gets a prostate biopsy. Same needle. It goes through a transperineal approach and we numb the area. Most men are getting it currently through anesthesia. Our first patient get it through nitrous gas in the office. There are multiple ways to do this, but I think as physicians we typically make a big effort to keep our patients more comfortable. Either we give them a sedative, we can give short forms of anesthesia, or we can give conscious sedation. The procedure is about 30 minutes. So I think we can, depending who does it and how familiar people are, we have seen people take about 30 minutes, sometimes longer, to do this procedure.
Right. And does the stage at which the cancer is at make any difference to the efficacy?
Yeah, we feel that only men who has their prostate cancer completely confined to the prostate will benefit. So if you only treat the prostate, of course, if prostate cancer has already spread outside the prostate, we would probably not benefit those men.
And could you tell me a bit more about your clinical trials so far?
So we started with our collaborator at the NCI, Dr. Pinto and his group. So what we did is like we wanted to see whether the prostate cancer can be affected by these implants. So in order to figure out how much drug we have in the prostate, how much tumor shrinkage we have in the prostate, we enrolled men who were already scheduled to have a prostatectomy. So these men were planned to have a prostatectomy. Then we implanted them, did an MRI at baseline, measured the tumor, and then after 6 to 12 weeks, we did another MRI before we took the prostate out. So then we did two things. We measured our tumor size, change of it. We measured how much drug we have around the implants and throughout the prostate. And then we also looked at like what side effects do we have, how much drug is in the plasma, do men have worsening erectile dysfunction, do they have difference in urinary symptoms? And what we can say is like we do not have an adverse effect on sexual health or urinary health. We have therapeutic levels in the prostate that are similar to what we would see if you gave it orally around the implants. And we have very little in the plasma. So this is now data on our first 20 patients.
What is your hope for men with prostate cancer, that you'll be able to stop it or have it as a manageable disease? Or I hate to say the word cure, but what is it? What's your goal?
The underpinnings of prostate cancer are that many men with lower intermediate grade prostate cancer probably will never have high enough progression that they actually will have an adverse outcome with the prostate cancer. So in other words, many or a lot of men actually will die with prostate cancer, not from the prostate cancer. However, there's still about, in this low to intermediate risk prostate cancer, there's still about 30 to 50% who progress on needing a prostatectomy or definitive radiation plus minus systemic anti-androgen therapy. So what we are hoping is that we can prevent the need for a prostatectomy or definitive surgery by a procedure that takes 30 minutes, is it's pretty easy, doesn't have a lot of side effects, doesn't preclude anyone from further treatment. So let's say if you did the Enolen implant and 3 years later you needed a prostatectomy for some reason, you could do this. Our procedure does not interfere with anything else. It doesn't interfere with imaging, doesn't interfere with subsequent procedures. It is an opportunity for someone that they can do and see whether it benefits. Now, the fact that we have 85% of our lesions are somewhat shrinkage provides me with a fair bit of confidence that these tumors are not progressing.
So, where do you move to from here with your subsequent clinical trials?
So the next trial is for us to actually prove that men who are on active surveillance can actually stay on active surveillance. So what we're going to do is we're going to randomize men who are on active surveillance to either getting the Enolen implants versus not. And we follow them in a trial that's probably closer to 600 patients. We follow them for 3 years and see whether we can reduce the progression of prostate cancer, and with this, the need for prostatectomy or radiation therapy. So we are hoping we benefit at least half of these men do not have to do any definitive interventions. And then our next step is for our more high-risk patients, we are developing a combination of a PARP inhibitor with an enzalutamide implant. So we have a second implant for the more high-risk patients.
And are you looking to partnerships to progress this, or are you doing this independently?
We are open to partnerships. We can probably go our own way, but we would very much appreciate to have partnerships. Prostate cancer is a very, very significant health burden, not just in the US, but all over the world. I think so. We think we make a big impact with this. And while we can do all the trials alone, it's going beyond that is probably where we really need a partner. But we are open to all sorts of partnerships.
And when do you, obviously you can't tell exactly, but when do you anticipate this would be available?
If all goes well, we think we may be available by 2030, 31.
Oh, very good. And are there any other things that you're working on in the pipeline at the company?
Yeah, so a big part of our mission is, of course, also treating the more high-risk patients. For many, many decades in oncology, we have focused on if we have a tumor in an organ and it's defined to this organ, we take that organ out. And some organs are easier to take out and more dispendable, but some organs are not. It's if someone has an early stage pancreatic cancer, it's still harder to take the pancreas out. It's same is true for other vital organs like lungs or livers or kidneys. So a big push forward in this field is really going to be for organ-defined disease, can we treat them more locally? And then, of course, oncology is where my heart is. But there are a lot of other diseases that are organ-defined. And I think this is a really exciting, a very exciting field for the future. And I think a lot of folks are like starting to work on this. So we are super excited about that.
Are there other treatments within, you obviously you're working on prostate cancer, but are there other companies working on things that you're also very impressed by?
Yeah, I think Johnson & Johnson has worked on the pretzel. They delivered an old chemotherapy drug to the bladder for muscle invasive bladder cancer, so that we can just treat it. The bladder is an organ. If you take the bladder out, you cause a fair bit of medical detriment because the bladder is a very vital organ for the urinary tract. So they looked at rather than taking the bladder out, just treating the bladder with the chemotherapy that just stays in the bladder. There's multiple other companies who do this. For me, I actually started the idea of Alessa and how this all got started is because I see a lot of patients with high risk for breast cancer. I have a clinic with women who have BRCA mutation who are at about 80% lifetime risk to breast cancer. So we've been working early on a breast cancer implant. And I'm hoping to go back and move this forward at some point.
Those are the only questions I had. Is there anything else that you wanted to mention that we didn't talk about there?
Yeah, I think just our solution is actually quite simple. An implant that delivers drugs for at least 2 years. It can be inserted by standard procedure. Any urologist who can do a biopsy can probably place these implants. And there's a lot of men who be eligible for that. We have support from the regulatory agencies that our trial is sound and can be done. The endpoints are verifiable. So I think we have an implant prototype that we feel very good about. So I think, yes, it takes time, but really on track to make this happen.
And is it something that, will it be something that's expensive to make, and will it be easy to produce at scale?
I can't speak to the expense of what the consumer has to pay, but we know how to make this. And we know how to make this reproducibly. Manufacturing and production of this is very straightforward. We have intellectual property around how to make this. So I don't have to prove that enzalutamide works in prostate cancer. There are hundreds of thousands of men who currently been treated with enzalutamide. And we know that it helps in metastatic disease, in advanced metastatic, early metastatic disease. So I don't have to prove that enzalutamide works. I only have proof that I get it there. And I think our first 20 patients show us we get the drug there. And because it's an effective drug and we have tumor shrinkage, I think that provides a very good sense of confidence that we get the drug there, the drug is active, we see tumor shrinkage. So I feel pretty good in a phase 3 trial.
Some fantastic results from Alessa Therapeutics. Let's hope they can be one of the companies that makes prostate cancer not as frightening as it currently is, and other cancers too, as they work on more diseases over time. So that's it for this week's podcast. If you do want to get in touch with guest opportunities, or if you want to advertise, please feel free to contact us at jim@deeptechdigest.com. So until next time, wherever in the world you are, I hope you have a great week ahead. Thanks for listening, and I hope you'll join us again next time for another Base to Base Biotech podcast. The Base to Base Biotech podcast is an Air Coastal Media Limited production.